Hi, my name is Sunny Holmes, and I'm a physical therapist at Rein. Today, I'll be presenting on unmounted activities for riders and how you can incorporate those into your riding lessons. So just a brief overview for this quick presentation, we'll be discussing some common unmounted activities that typically occur during riding lessons, and I'll be breaking down each of these unmounted activities into potential benefits and requirements for the rider, as well as the appropriateness for each rider and potential populations of riders. So first, unmounted activities, they typically occur during the beginning and end of your lesson, and they can also lead to an added feeling of independence and accomplishment, as you well know. And in the beginning, you want to set your rider up for success. So choosing some unmounted activities that will lead to that success during your lesson, and then you can kind of wrap it up and tie it all together with some different unmounted activities or similar ones, but potentially more challenging near the end of your lesson. So let's go over some of the common unmounted activities that we'll be reviewing today. So clipping the reins on and off the bridle, leading the horse, rein placement when preparing to ride, adjusting the stirrups and girth, stair negotiation or ramp negotiation if needing to use the mounting block or the ramp, and walking on even or uneven surfaces. So let's talk about clipping the reins on and off the bridle first. So I'm going to be listing the benefits / requirements. So for each of these unmounted activities, there is a list of requirements, but also that also ties into the potential benefits that you're working on. For example, so dexterity, and in this case with clipping reins on and off, you need that manual dexterity. So that you need that fine motor grasp, that ability to, depending, I guess, what kind of clips you have, but at least the ones that we have are kind of like a hook. And so they require you to pinch on either side of the clip, and then you can hook it onto the reins, and then you release that clip, and then that grasp onto the bridle. So the manual dexterity definitely needs to be there. And the strength needs to be there as well. So now we're kind of looking at our different types of grasps. So you have the lateral pinch grasp. And so that is the one that you'll typically be using. That's kind of like a keyhole grasp is another word for it. So if you're grabbing your keys to put them in the lock on your front door, then your thumb and your first finger are pinching together. And then your thumb is coming sort of on the side of that pointer finger in order to make that grasp. You also have the pincer grasp, which is the tips of your thumb and your finger coming together. And you have the 3-jaw chuck, which is similar to a pincer, but your middle finger comes to assist as well. So it's the tips of your thumb, pointer, and middle finger all coming together to perform that grasp. So definitely they need the strength in order to clip the reins on and off. You'll also, this activity also requires visual acuity, and dysmetria can play into this. So dysmetria is the inability to coordinate movements and either undershoot or overshoot them. So if I'm reaching with my clip at the end of the reins for the bridle, and I pass it, then I'm overshooting it. And if I don't get quite far enough, then obviously I'm undershooting it. So having a diagnosis like dysmetria can definitely play in their ability or inability to clip their reins on and off. So just something to keep in mind if there are any visual impairments. And you will need some bimanual coordination in order to do this task. So whether that's your right hand assisting with your left hand or left with the right, or maybe while the right is doing the lateral pinch grasp, to open the clip, then the left hand is holding the other side of the reins. So both hands have to be doing something at the same time. And this activity can be difficult for riders who present with hypertonia or hypotonia. So hyper is higher tone, or hypotonia is lower tone. So typically with hypertonia, they might not have that dexterity or the ability to move their hands just because the muscular tone is so high. And with hypotonia, they do have a lot of flexibility, but oftentimes with hypotonia can be associated with decreased strength abilities. So they might not have that pinch grasp and the strength behind it in order to clip and unclip reins. And it could also be difficult for riders presenting with attention deficits, especially if they get frustrated easily, since this is a kind of a smaller task that requires more attention and patience. If they don't get it correctly the first time, then this again could be a difficult task for them, or something that you can kind of continue to work on. And if they do need help, then you can slowly fade the amount of help that you give them. And like I spoke about already, this can be difficult for riders presenting with any type of visual impairments. So let's move on to the next unmounted activity. This one is kind of the biggest one, and this is leading the horse. So this has the most requirements out of all the other unmounted activities that we're going to talk about. And obviously that's mostly because it incorporates leading a live animal who is at times unpredictable in their movements. So some of the requirements are independent walking. So they need to be able to walk by themselves in order to lead a horse. And they need to have appropriate balance on even or uneven surfaces, depending on where they're leading the horse. If it's on an even surface up to the mounting ramp, then maybe they only need the balance enough to do that. However, if you're having them, dismount in the arena and, they need to walk the horse from the arena back into the barn or the cross ties, and they're, on the arena footing, then they also need the balance requirements in order to walk on uneven surfaces. So this is a big thing. Obviously, this is an issue for safety as well. So making sure that your rider has the appropriate balance before you have them lead the horse, or just lead the horse independently. There can be different levels as well. And you could have them start by just touching the very end of the lead rope and you are leading the horse. And so then that makes them feel like they are helping and have that sense of accomplishment without risking any unsafe behaviors. Another requirement is that dual task coordination. So not only are they having to walk, are they having to balance, they're having to visually scan, they have to look at what the horse is doing and their movements, and also know where they're going. So they have to kind of get from point A to point B. So there are a lot of things to coordinate for the rider in order to be able to safely and effectively lead the horse to the next location. So just keep that in mind, that there's all these components happening while you're asking a rider to lead a horse. There's motor control and grading of movement that's occurring. So for instance, if you're having them, lead the horse down to the mounting area or up to the mounting area, and that is on a slight grade or slope, then you have to know that they are able to walk down that slope or up that slope appropriately while grading their momentum and not losing that momentum. And then I already spoke about motor planning, so getting from point A to point B, that they know how to get there, and then they are able to, make any changes along the route if it's a longer one. And safety awareness, this is the biggest key component of leading the horse, that they have to constantly be aware of what the horse is doing. And again, in order for them to safely do this, you could have them start by just leading the horse by just holding the end of the lead rope, and you're the one that's actually leading the horse. And confidence is key, definitely. We don't want any horses that are kind of taking control during their way on their way to the mounting ramp or mounting block. And the riders also require good postural control in order to do this. So let's move on to the next one. This one is rein placement when preparing to ride. So putting those reins over the head or only clipping on one side, and then placing the reins over the neck and then clipping on the other side of the bridle. So some of the requirements for this are motor planning, again, how to get from point A to point B. So then they also need the coordination in order to do this. If it requires them to reach up with both hands or with one hand, then they need to be able to do that appropriately. Again, body awareness plays into it so that they're not doing anything unsafe with their body during this time or leaning on the horse inappropriately, and just where they're standing in relation to the horse. And of course, this plays into safety awareness. And again, if the horse doesn't prefer the reins to go over their ears when you're preparing to ride, and you need to, place it high over the ears, or you need to either just like I said earlier, just clip one side and then put the reins over the neck and then clip in on the other side, and just being aware of potential safety issues. Now, adjusting stirrups and girth. So this can be done potentially while the instructor is holding the horse or while the horse is staying still. If you have a rider who's able to coordinate kind of both the horse's movement and body awareness, as well as adjusting stirrups and girth at the same time. So some of the requirements for this, again, fine motor, dexterity, and strength play a key role. So in order to lift the stirrup leathers up and find the correct hole for the stirrups, and same with the girth. And then you also have to have the good, appropriate visual acuity to make sure that the stirrup, if you're doing this on the ground, which that's what we're speaking about, that the stirrups are even, and they have to be able to gauge that appropriately before mounting. Again, coordination can play a key role in this. So while one hand is lifting up the stirrup leather, then the other hand is, sliding the metal clasp to the correct hole. So coordinating those two different hand movements at the same time. Same with the girth, as one hand is pulling up the girth and the other is finding the appropriate hole for the girth. And of course, safety awareness definitely plays into any changes with girth. If the horse is not happy when that happens, or prone to movement when that happens, they need to be aware of that. And we have also stair or ramp negotiation at the mounting block or the ramp. And some riders will use the mounting block and they'll be required to go upstairs, or if you have a mounting ramp, then they could be required to go up a small grade in order to mount the horse. So some of the benefits and requirements for this activity are concentric and eccentric muscular control. So concentric muscular control is, say for instance, when I am walking up a ramp or I am walking upstairs, that is going to be concentric muscular control. And then when I am going down a ramp or downstairs and really having to control that forward momentum, that is going to be your eccentric muscular control. Similarly, I'll provide another example that when you're doing something like a bicep curl and I have, a 5-pound weight in my hand and I'm bringing that weight from, my hip all the way up to my shoulder, and those two bone, my forearm and my upper arm are approximating or coming closer together, that is concentric. And when they are going in the opposite direction, so my hand is going from my shoulder to my hip and controlling, again, that momentum or that grading of movement, that is going to be your eccentric muscular control. Another requirement is definitely balance. So making sure there's a handrail available, or if it's a mounting block, then definitely making sure that they have appropriate balance to negotiate those very narrow stairs on the mounting block prior to trying that out with a horse present. Range of motion requirements and motor planning, how to get from point A to point B, especially important with the stair negotiation, and coordination obviously plays a role in that, as well as walking up the ramp or stairs. And depth perception. This is definitely important for when they do go up the ramp, then they need to make sure that, if it is a higher ramp, that they know that there is a potential drop off where the horse stands when they're about to mount, just for safety purposes. And again, for stair negotiation, that they're able to perceive where that next step is. So a quick summary, just incorporating these unmounted activities can definitely improve your lessons. I'm sure this was a review for most of you, and just wanted to bring to your attention the requirements for riders to have in order to do these unmounted activities. And if they do have the requirements, then some of the benefits that they can have from doing these activities on a regular basis and building up some strength or some coordination or whatever it may be. Also, the need to consider appropriateness of each activity for individual riders. So if there is a visual impairment there, then maybe they will need some assistance with clipping the reins on and off, or mounting or stair negotiation or ramp negotiation. And again, the primary focus of your lesson is still on the mounted portion of the lesson. However, unmounted activities are also a crucial part of riding a horse. So if you have any questions, please let me know. You can send them in ahead of time and we can discuss at our Q&A question session. Thank you for listening.